Christine Jacobs. I have the pleasure of being the executive director of Represent PA. Represent is the PAC in Pennsylvania dedicated to flipping the state legislature with strong progressive women. And there's a lot of pieces in there, but trust me, we accept the fact that we are a very partisan organization. But one of the things we try and bring to you is views of Pennsylvania that'll help your thinking. And some of that thinking and some of the best thinking currently being done in Pennsylvania is being done by nonpartisan sources. And I'm particularly fond of the people from Spotlight. You know, we're going to talk today about redistricting. And as most of you know, if you've read anything, if redistricting is your subject to be reading about, the redistricting panel released their preliminary House and Senate maps. Everybody was either delighted or horrified, depending on what you read. But there's a lot of really good data that's in there. The legislature can accept or decline it. There's going to be appeals. It could go to the PA Supreme Court. It's not clear what the timing is going to be. But these new districts are going to reshape the legislature over the next decade. And that's why this is a critically important subject. Some of the detailed analysis we've seen says the Democrats like their prospects of maybe taking over the state house, but the Senate maps will further entrench Republicans. Who knows? This is all conjecture on people's parts. And that's why we decided to have a nonpartisan organization give us some more detail. I'm a big fan of Spotlight PA. They started a few years ago, and these are just some words from their own website. Their mission is to hold powerful private and public forces across Pennsylvania to account through compelling investigative journalism. Wow, when you read so much about how newspapers across the country are shrinking or being bought up by conglomerates, this is something that there's been a real need for in Pennsylvania. I also like their diversity statement because they bring on a team of journalists who reflect unique skills, perspectives, and experiences so that their journalism reflects the state's many communities. We at Represent talk a lot about reflective democracy. My usual statement about this is until and unless our elected officials look like all of us in terms of race, gender, religion, political biases, where you come from, until they look like all of Pennsylvanians, we're not going to have the democracy we think we want or that we think we already have. And I also like the fact that Spotlight works on collaboration. They know, Chris could talk about how big his team is, but they know, they can't do everything themselves. But periodically, for example, I live in Philadelphia, you'll see a lot of bylines that are somebody from the Inquirer with somebody from Spotlight, or it's just a Spotlight byline. And I read all of those articles because I know the quality of the journalism is there. And I just think that they've been an important addition to Pennsylvania, and I'm very thankful. So with that, I say it's yours, Chris Baxter. Chris is the CEO and editor-in-chief of Spotlight PA, and he and his team are going to take over this meeting for a while. So thank you, Chris.
Great, thank you, Christine, and thanks for the invitation. We're happy to be here, and this is, of course, a very pressing topic right now and something that we're spending a lot of time on. We have a presentation I'll go ahead and share. I will go through a couple slides just about what Spotlight PA is, not being repetitive of Christine's great introduction. Thank you for that. And then I will hand off to our deputy editor, Sarah Ann Hughes, who has been helping lead our redistricting coverage. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Make sure you all can see that. Okay, great. Quick agenda of what we intend to go through here. As I mentioned in introduction, we'll talk a little bit about the status of maps, how we got to where we are and where we are right now. Sarah will break down the House and Senate maps as well as the congressional map, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. So we'll try to get through this in about 35, 40 minutes max. At the top, I put this for all of our, whenever we do a discussion for an individual group, that as a public service, we do make all efforts to grant reasonable requests for presentations and informational sessions to groups across the state, regardless of their political affiliation. Our presentations are informational, and Spotlight PA and its employees don't take any position on any particular proposal, candidate, bill, etc. And also just a reminder, and I think important to state, our funders, our members, anyone who gives us any money has no role in our editorial decisions or any special access to our newsroom. Also, all of our donors are identified. If you give $1, you are identified as a Spotlight PA donor on our website. So we do practice that full transparency, because transparency is something that we demand every day from our state government. I'll sort of skip through the mission because I think Christine covered it well. A little bit about what makes Spotlight PA different than other newsrooms you might be used to. For one, we are a member-supported newsroom, producing and focused on independent, nonpartisan journalism that's vital to the health of our democracy. We don't run any opinion content, we don't endorse candidates or make any other kind of endorsements, and we don't accept straight political advertising. We are the largest statewide newsroom in Pennsylvania, with a team of nearly a dozen journalists that are focused on holding the powerful to account and really elevating stories that otherwise would go untold. We're also the largest collaborative news organization of our kind in the country. We share all of our work at no cost with now 79 community newsroom partners across the state, in addition to all of our channels, our website, spotlightpa.org, our newsletters, etc. This is a really centralized, efficient model, a new model for journalism, to have a really professional, talented, centralized team that produces high quality journalism that's not being done elsewhere and then shares it with everyone. That makes Spotlight PA, I think, a very efficient point of support, but also really a critical new component to the state. And also we built in 2 short years just a recognized brand across the state, thanks to this large distribution network that's trusted and respected as nonpartisan and truly statewide, not aligned to any particular geographic region, which in Pennsylvania, I think is an important element to a statewide newsroom. In terms of redistricting, we are the only newsroom in Pennsylvania and one of the only ones in the country with a reporter dedicated to covering redistricting and the issues surrounding it. Last year, sorry, I can't say last year anymore because we've turned the books. In late 2020, I made the decision, based largely on feedback we were getting from our readers, that we really needed to make a dedicated effort on redistricting, that it was too important to leave as sort of a side 20% of somebody else's beat. We needed to focus on it, and this was something that we could do that we knew other newsrooms wouldn't do. So we made that decision. We went to our members, we went to a few of our larger funders and asked them to support that position. And just as an indication of how important this topic is, within about 3 days, we had pretty much the entirety of the 100,000 we need for an individual reporter position to do this. So we pressed ahead. And since then, it's been just fantastic. The amount of coverage, the overall engagement around the redistricting effort this year, I think, has been historic. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, but that's a little background about how we decided to focus on this issue. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, our deputy editor, and then I'll pop back at the very end with a couple words, and then we can do a Q&A. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. I'm really, really excited to talk to you this morning about the redistricting process. So for those of you who haven't been following this closely, redistricting is a process that takes place every 10 years after the release of new census data. And to account for changes in population, we have to redraw our congressional map, and we have to redraw our state house and Senate maps. Something notable about our congressional map this year is that because Pennsylvania's population growth was pretty sluggish compared to other states, we lost one of our congressional seats, which means that this current map will have 17. So what's happened so far? So the congressional map process has been a little bit messy. So State House Republicans led by Representative Seth Grove, who chairs a really powerful committee in the State House, have advanced a congressional map, which the governor has already come out against. In terms of the legislative maps, the State House and Senate maps, they've been released and they're currently under a 30-day public comment period, which is very soon to end. So there are different processes for drawing the congressional map and the legislative maps. So the congressional map is passed through legislation and then sent to the governor. So essentially that means that usually either House or Senate Republicans, because they control the legislature, will release a map as part of a bill, move it through the legislative process and send it to the governor, who can either say, yes, I'm on board, or veto it. And a veto can be overridden in the legislature with 2/3 majority. That very, 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 very rarely happens because Republicans do not hold that large of majorities in either chamber. The legislative maps are approved by this 5-member panel called the Legislative Reapportionment Commission. And so that includes the top Democrats from the House and Senate. So that's Joanna McClinton from the House and Jay Costa from the Senate, and the top Republicans. So that is Carrie Benninghoff from Centre County in the House and Kim Ward from Westmoreland County in the Senate. And then per the Constitution, these 4 folks are supposed to pick a nonpartisan chair. That doesn't happen usually. So the default is that the state Supreme Court picks a nonpartisan chair. For this cycle, the court picked Mark Nordenberg. He is a former chancellor of the University of Pittsburgh, a highly, highly respected person who's well known in Pennsylvania civic life and discourse. So we are at a really, really important moment for the redistricting process. So today, in a few hours, the full House is expected to vote on this congressional map. The way that a bill gets sent to the governor is it originates in one chamber, it goes through the committee process, it then goes to all of the lawmakers to vote on. If a majority says yes, it goes to the other chamber and goes to the same process. So right now it's looking like this map is going to pass the full House today and be sent to the Senate. The complication here, or the sort of the thing that's making things a little bit more interesting, is that two groups of citizens separately brought lawsuits in Commonwealth Court saying, hey, we really don't have confidence that the governor and the legislature are going to be able to agree on this in a timely manner. We're running up into a lot of primary deadlines right now. The first filing deadline is February 15th for the primaries. And so the Department of State is sweating a little bit right now saying, hey, we really, really need these maps to start helping candidates file. And so Commonwealth Court has said, okay, we see this. Wolf, what lawmakers, you have until January 30th to pass a map, agree on one. If you can't, we're taking over. So that is sort of looming over the legislature right now. So that's the congressional map. The State House and Senate maps, as I said, are under this 30-day comment period that ends January 18th, which I believe is Monday. They have 2 more feedback sessions, one on Friday, one on Saturday. And then they have 30 days to take all the feedback they've gotten, and they've gotten quite a bit. I think the last I heard they had gotten almost 2,000 comments on these maps. So they have 30 days to absorb all that information and then release the final maps and vote on them once again. This 5-member panel gets to vote on them. Within those 30 days, after that, legal challenges can be brought. And it seems pretty fair to bet that there likely will be legal challenges to one or both of these maps that the Supreme Court will have to sort out. I'm just reading comments really quickly. Are the maps connected? Meaning if the congressional map is rejected or approved, does it trickle down to implicate? No, these are completely separate processes. They do not intersect, right? So if the congressional map If Wolf rejects the congressional map and it goes to court, that means nothing for the legislative or the House maps. It's totally separate processes. And I see a question about how many communities are divided in this map, and I will get into splits for the maps in a little bit. So Pennsylvania House map, this is 203 districts. This is what the proposal looks like at the moment. It improves on fairness metrics as mandated by the state constitution, and it creates more districts that could be won by Democrats. So just so everyone has a baseline, at the moment, the Pennsylvania House has 112 Republicans, 89 Democrats, and 2 seats are vacant. This new map, according to an analysis that the Princeton Gerrymandering Project did, could potentially elect 99 Democrats and 104 Republicans. So still a Republican majority, but a much, much smaller one than what exists now. So when we talk about the maps, in the past decade, there have been some measures of fairness that have emerged in court cases that have helped the courts decide when a map is gerrymandered, which means drawn to benefit one party unfairly over another, or whether or not the map, meets these metrics that say, looking at the composition of the state, this map pretty fairly represents it. So compactness, split minimization, population equality. These are, for our state House and Senate maps, requirements in the state constitution. The state constitution says you have to focus on this. You have to have a compact map. You have to have a map that minimizes splits of counties, municipalities, voting precincts. And you have to have a map that evenly divides these districts within a 10% margin. So the House map scores pretty well on these, as you can see. Split minimization, which was a question in the comments. So, they're on a larger scale for county splits, it does really, really well. It doesn't, it splits counties really only when it needs to. Now, when you get down to the smaller levels, municipalities and voting precincts, that is a little more art than science in terms of splitting it. And in terms of the feedback that the panel has gotten, a lot of it has been on these smaller municipal splits. People saying, oh, you probably don't know this, but you split up 2 school districts that fundraise together. So when you're considering changes to the map, you should probably put those 2 school districts back together into a map. So population equality, this is, it meets the requirement. It's pretty close to not though. And so essentially that just means that, an ideal House district should have about 64,000 people. Some districts have closer to 70 in this proposed map. Some have lower to 60. And so I know that's something that the panel is working on. So the rest of these metrics are sort of these newer ideas that the courts have embraced. This idea of partisan fairness, which if I look at the state and I say, 50% of the people who live here are Democrats and 58% of the people who live here are Republicans, that should be reflected in these districts. So this House map has a slight Republican bias, but it's pretty good, considering that, some of the other proposals had 8%, 9%. Competitiveness is this idea that these districts, if you ran a Republican and Democrat, they would really have a competitive race. And it does not do great on that metric, which Fair Districts Pennsylvania, a fantastic nonpartisan group that has really sort of led the charge to bring redistricting into the public consciousness, has said it's a really, really difficult metric to make good on, especially when you're considering, incumbency. So it fails on this, but again, it's a difficult metric in the first place. And then minority representation, it's an improvement. I'll get into that a little bit more in future slides. So reaction so far, Democrats and nonpartisan redistricting advocates, they like it. They are saying this is a map that more accurately reflects Pennsylvania. As I said, Fair Districts PA, which is a nonpartisan group, has said you know, the fact that Democrats could pick up 10 seats is not a reflection that this map is unfairly drawn. It's a reflection that past redistricting cycles have been affected by gerrymandering in favor of Republicans. And so this map is sort of the beginning of trying to undo that. Republicans, meanwhile, really do not like this House proposal. They are saying it's been gerrymandered, and they are so angry about it that they are now moving a proposed amendment to the state constitution to try to change the process of how these maps are drawn and to give the legislature the ultimate yes or no over these maps. So the Senate map. So this is a less radical proposal. So it keeps the partisan composition, right? So we would expect Republicans to win about as many seats as they have now, and Democrats to win about as many seats as they have now. But it does improve upon some of the traditional fairness metrics that we've already discussed. And just so everyone knows, there are 28 Republicans in the Senate, 1 independent who caucuses with the Republicans, and 20 Democrats. Yeah, and that's a great point, Chris. Don't have a slide on this, but you know, population has really declined in the western and northern parts of our state, which are heavily Republican, while growing significantly in the southeast and south central part of our state. So yeah, that's another factor that influences how these districts were redrawn. So much like the House map, average score for compactness does really well on county splits, meets the population equality requirement, but sort of pushing the limit there. Partisan fairness, very similar to the House map. The Senate map actually does better on competitiveness, creating districts where Democrats and Republicans would have more competitive elections, and also it does improve on minority representation. So I see a question here about why isn't the Senate legislative map 50-50? So you know, our state is pretty evenly divided with, well, it has more Democrats statewide than Republicans. So you would think that the Senate would be split that way. The complication here, I mean, there's a few complications, but one is geography. In some ways, our state, you know, districts have to be compact. They have to be contiguous. They can't, you know, snake across different parts of the state. And for that reason, this process is always going to sort of lean Republican, because the way that the districts are drawn, you know, has to be done in a way that accounts for these factors that, you know, in these rural parts of the state, in the less populated parts of the state, these districts have to be kept together. I'm not explaining this super well, but just to say that the geography of our state makes drawing these districts really complicated and sort of gives a natural advantage to Republicans. So reaction to the Senate map overall, the Democratic leader and Republican leader, Jay Costa and Kim Ward, said, hey, we worked on this together. It's a compromise map. This is, you know, I don't know that either, you know, Costa said there's room for improvement, but, you know, I think they tried to come up with a map that both of their caucuses could live with. That has, you know, sort of, you know, nonpartisan advocates saying, hey, you know, this is too deferential to incumbents' way. It's looked at making sure that incumbents aren't matched up to one another and that they get to keep their seats. And it's really not reflecting the population changes that we're seeing in the state well enough. So one place that you can see that when we talk about population equality is when you look at how far a district deviates from that sort of sweet spot. And the Senate districts in our western part of the state have too few people, and our Senate districts in our eastern part of the state have too many people by this metric. And so I know that's something that the panel has said they want to work on in trying to even that out a little bit. So one of the really big goals for the Legislative Reapportionment Commission was to create more districts where Hispanic, Black, Asian, non-white folks could elect the candidate of their choice. The census data shows us that the fastest growing population in our state are Hispanic people, and that's not really reflected in our representation. As Christine said, it's not represented in who's actually serving in the State House and Senate. So the House map creates 7 what are called minority opportunity districts. So that includes something you might have all heard of, the Voting Rights Act districts. These are districts that have to meet 4 or 5 legal points in order to be called VRA districts, but essentially it just means that a majority of the people in the district are minority. Minority influence districts, which means one minority group or a coalition of minority groups, they might not have 50% of the population in the district, but they have 35, 40%, a pretty good size that could give them a really good chance of electing a candidate of their choice. And then coalition districts, which are also majority minority districts, they just don't meet the standards set out in the Voting Rights Act. Couple of those districts, where are these districts going to be created? Philadelphia will have 2, under this plan, has 2 new minority opportunity districts. Lehigh County, Montgomery County, Harrisburg, Luzerne, and Schuylkill counties. These, for folks who are from these areas, very obviously growing Hispanic populations and significant populations of Black people in these areas. So the Senate has 1 new minority influence district, which was spearheaded by Kim Ward. And so this is a district without an incumbent that includes part of Allentown that has about 45% minority coalition population, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. So Mark Nordenberg, the nonpartisan chair, Kim Ward, everyone's pretty happy with this district. There has been pushback against it because people who are from this area say, love that you're thinking about this, but this district splits Allentown. And Allentown is obviously a community of interest, and it should be kept together. The people of Allentown shouldn't be split into multiple districts. A fair criticism that sort of brings up the difficulties in drawing these maps. The argument against that, in favor of splitting Allentown, is that this district has no incumbent. The other Senate district is controlled by Pat Brown, this very powerful chair of the Appropriations Committee, who would very, very likely keep his seat, even if the district's population, the Hispanic population in his district was increased. So again, just shows some of the challenges of creating these districts. So as I said, one of the sort of big topics of conversation is, do these maps protect incumbents, or do they focus more on these fairness standards and create matchups between incumbents? So Senate map friendly to incumbents. As I said, it's just 1 district, has no existing lawmaker. House map, very, very different. It creates districts with 15 open seats. So that means a district where the current representative no longer would live in that district. Their address is now outside of that district. Or it's a totally brand new district. So to account for the changes in population this year, some districts that were in the West were moved to the East. So clearly the person who represents that district can no longer do that because they live on the other side of the state. The House map also pits 24 incumbents against each other. 6 of them are Republican versus Republican, 4 Democrat versus Republican, 2 Democrat versus Democrat. And so that's also adding to some of the unhappiness over the proposed House map. But again, if you talk to nonpartisan advocates, they say these incumbency matchups are a good thing. They show that the map makers weren't thinking overly about protecting existing lawmakers. Instead, they were thinking about drawing the best districts possible. So the next slide shows where the open House seats are. So these are the House seats that have no current representative in them. And you'll see there's some in Philadelphia, the eastern part of our state, central, and the western surrounding Allegheny County as well. Okay, I'm going to look at the chat real quick before I dive into congressional. I understand that overall, the more Republican districts have fewer people than the Democratic districts, so Republicans tend to be overrepresented. True, yeah. So that, I mean, that's another sort of just factor of our geography, right? Like, in order to draw these compact, contiguous districts that meet the Constitution, when we're looking at population deviation, a lot of times you'll see Republican-held districts have fewer people than in sort of heavily concentrated Democratic districts. Okay, so the congressional map. So I could talk for a long time about the congressional map, but I won't. Because if I was a betting person, this is not the map that's going to take effect. The current congressional map proposal has a strong Republican advantage, and as I said, a little chance of becoming the actual map. Just to sort of quickly go over the scores, has an average compactness score, doesn't meet the requirement for population equality. So the deviation in some of these districts swings way, way, way too big. There are too many people in the sort of Democratic leaning districts. There are too few people in the Republican ones. Our current congressional makeup is a split. We've got 9 Democrats and we've got 9 Republicans. This map would keep the 9 Republican leaning seats while having 5 Democratic leaning seats and 3 highly competitive seats. It's not great on competitiveness, and it doesn't really do anything to improve minority representation. So why am I not delving too deep into the congressional map? One of the big reasons is that Governor Tom Wolf does not like this proposal. So the first map that the House Republicans put out was drawn by a woman named Amanda Holt. She's really, really well known in redistricting circles, highly respected. She brought lawsuits against the state House and Senate maps a decade ago because they did not meet the constitutional requirements and won. She drew many, many versions of a congressional map, and Seth Grove picked one and said, hey, we've put out a citizen map. We've taken lawmakers out of the process. This is a victory. A few days later, over some complaints of members in the committee that he controls, they advanced a altered version of the map without really any public consideration. So Governor Tom Wolf says, I don't like how this map was moved forward. It's skewed, it's splitting communities of interest, it's falling short on partisan fairness, it's giving Republicans an advantage they're not supposed to have based on the makeup of our state. He hasn't said if he would veto it, but essentially he's told Republicans, I'm not negotiating with you, send me what you want to send me, I'm either going to say yes or no. So pretty strong message to the Republicans that the map as it stands is not something he'd likely sign. So what happens next here for the congressional map? Court. As I said, Commonwealth Court has said you have until January 30th, then we're going to take over the process. It's very, very likely that the state Supreme Court will eventually say yes to taking over this case. As many of you probably know, they threw out our last congressional map in 2018, finding that it had been drawn unfairly to benefit Republicans. And so, you know, this has been sort of the expectation from the very beginning of the process that the courts were going to be the ones to draw this map, especially as we're losing a congressional seat. So for better or for worse, this is how that part of the process is going to work.
So I want to start with a question for you, Sarah or Chris, and that's that given, you know, our focus is on the state maps for our PAC, but of course the timing of the primaries and next steps is tied to both the congressional maps and the state house maps because it's one primary. Betting people would say primary is going to be postponed, question mark?
So thus far, so the Department of State said we need maps by January 24th. That's not going to happen. That's a sunk deadline at this point. The House Republicans have been really resistant to the idea of moving the primary. Senate Republicans are a little bit more open to it. But if they don't meet this deadline, people can just run on the old state house and Senate maps again. That is an option that is available to us. And it seems kind of sort of likely at this point, considering, it's really going to depend on how much time the Legislative Reapportionment Commission takes to put out their final maps. But that is a decision that the state can make, that for this cycle, the 2022 cycle, they'll use the old maps.
That's for the state legislature. You can't use the old maps for Congress because we've gone down the state.
No, you can't, which is why the court has taken a sort of a more forward approach on that, sort of putting deadlines and saying January 31st, we will begin hearings to pick a map. Doesn't exactly line up with the deadline that the Department of State has put out. But that's sort of where it stands at the moment. I mean, if Republicans don't want to move the primary, they have that control, right? We would need to do it in a bill, and if they don't want to send it to Wolf, they won't. Representative Seth Grove has also put forward this idea that if we don't have a map in time for the congressional map, everyone would run in statewide elections, which would be a mess, right? All 17 congressional candidates would have to run in statewide elections and then somehow be put into districts. It's a confusing process to me. It's a mechanism in federal law that I think is never or very rarely used. So again, for the congressional map, I think the court's gonna move quickly on this. And the Department of State is probably just gonna have to move as quickly as possible. But everything is sort of changing day by day with these deadlines.
I've noticed, thank you for putting into the chat, Chris, where to get involved and how to get feedback to people. That's really important. We're doing this as an education, but also if you're so inspired that you want to put in your comments, there is a way of doing that. Star comment, I hate your comment. I just wanted to let you know, I detest it. Her comment was, if the Republicans don't move the primary, they'll be back and having an advantage to pass their constitutional amendment and change the process.
Yeah, so, and unless I'm mistaken, so a constitutional amendment, that's a long process, right? Both chambers would need to pass it this session, which ends in December, pass it again in the next session, then it would go on the ballot for voters. But we only draw these maps every 10 years. So unless I'm mistaken, the maps, if the maps that the LRC are drawing now, the legislative maps, don't go into effect in 2022, they will the following election after that, and they'll be in place until we redraw them again. So these maps will get some use. It wouldn't, that constitutional amendment to change how those maps are drawn, I don't think would affect anything until 2031.
Unless the Republicans can figure out another way of doing it. One of the problems we have in our Commonwealth is that when things like congressional amendments go onto the ballot, people tend to vote yes on all kinds of ballot initiatives. So.
Yes, and Patricia, you may absolutely be right. I will have to read it over again. Just so anybody wants to follow it today, that proposal, the one on changing the process of drawing the legislative maps, that will get a full House vote today, and then be sent to the Senate. And yes, if they would pass it again next year, both chambers, then it could be on the ballot in time for the primary in 2023. And Christine, you're totally right. I think in the past, like 50 years, only 6 constitutional amendments have failed. Because they can go on any ballot, right? They can go on like low, low turnout elections.
Right. In addition to questions, I noticed that, at least the last time I scrolled through, we have a couple members of the current legislature on. I saw that Tina Davis is on, and I saw somebody else. Tina, did you want to say hello and talk about the vote today? If you're still here, or Nancy Genst?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Nancy.
I'm just, it's going to be a crazy day. The Republicans are very unhappy here at the state level with the maps, and they're going to do everything they can to get rid of these maps that have been drawn. And they do want to do a constitutional amendment, which would go on the ballot in 23. And yes, they're done in primaries, and they rarely fail. And a lot of times it's because of how things are worded. So not really looking forward to today. There'll be a lot of arguing going on, as usual, on the floor. And, I'm just going to sit back and see what happens here.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else have any other questions for either Chris or for Sarah today? Again, thank you so much for the information. Thank you for the, please, Spotlight is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. I'm a sponsor. I send them personal funds because I believe in what they're doing, and because I think it's needed in Pennsylvania, and they're performing a great service for us. So thank you very much. So this is, just for those who know it, we've talked about this before. The current House is 90 Dems and 113 Republicans. We have the Senate is got 22 and 28. 8 of the senators have been endorsed and supported by Represent. We are still not a reflective democracy in terms of the number of women. A couple of things about, we just talked about redistricting. I wanted to mention a few things that are that has an effect on some of our candidates. 3 of our endorsed senators, 3 senators who are up for re-election, Lindsey Williams, Maria Collette, and Katie Muth, their districts are basically not changed very much, and Represent has re-endorsed them for re-election in 2022. There is 1 new Senate district, I believe, that's without an incumbent in Lancaster County. So we'll be watching to see who picks up that one. In the House, they mentioned that there were districts where there were 2 Democrats. Only one of them is a woman, male Democrat, and that's Pam Delisio, who we've endorsed for a number of cycles, and Chris Rabb are now in the same district in the Philadelphia suburbs area. Number of districts without incumbents. And the reason, this is important to me, and Sarah and Chris mentioned these in a very, of course, nonpartisan way. I look at these as opportunities for not only for a non-white minority pickup, but also for a woman pickup. Because as you know, and we've talked about many times over the last few years, it's really hard to not be the incumbent, and it's hard to run against an incumbent, because even when the incumbent doesn't do very good work, people say, well, at least it's my, I know her because she's been at ribbon cuttings and she's been at my kid's school, and I had a tax problem that the incumbent solved for me, without looking at the big votes. And so the big opportunities for change in Harrisburg are always districts where there's no incumbent. And we see some opportunities, and we're hoping that there are going to be some good candidates in these districts. I noticed that Deb Siamaka, are you still on the call?
I am.
Deb Siamaka is somebody we endorsed last cycle, and she came very close in Delaware County. She was a guest on one of our briefings in last fall, talking about her 2022 race, how she was hoping for, a good district. And now in the new district, it's the same as her home has been districted into Jen O'Mara's district. And again, this shows you, that the House map was not drawn with a consideration of where people were, but more to try and have a fair map. But B, It stinks because Deb's been running for 3 years. Campaign is still suspended, Deb?
It is. However, I'm waiting to find out whether or not we run on the old maps or not, because if we run on the old maps, I will run. Right.
See, there's a flip side for everything, everybody. So we look forward to hearing more about your future, Deb. I also noticed a couple other of our past candidates. I saw, who else is on? Oh, Claudette Williams. How are you, Claudette?
I'm doing great, thank you.
What did the new map do to your home in Monroe County? Any change?
It puts me in the 115, which Representative Madden is sitting in.
Okay, and that's, sorry. Yeah. But we look forward to hearing more from you, Claudette. There's
Okay,
more
I will
stuff
do
out there for you. And
Thank
Lauren LaRoe, what does this do to you?
This actually changes my district, and it no longer leans 3% Republican. It now leans 1.5% Democrat.
So are we going to be hearing more from Lauren LaRoe this year?
I hope so, or at least a Democrat. If not me, then someone. We're not going to leave this race untouched this year, for sure.
Thank you. And as all of you know who have been on Jackie Baker is on the call also. I know she ran for a Senate district in the past. Jackie, does this do anything for you?
Yes, if I will be changed from District 23 to District 20 if the new maps pass. And I will have the opportunity to run against Senator Lisa Baker, and I'm ready to do that. So I'm kind of hoping that I can run this year against Lisa Baker. I'm ready to go. I haven't stopped learning and speaking and traveling around the state and things like that. So I'm excited. I would love to run again this year, but it will depend on these maps.
And that would be a Baker versus Baker, kind of a interesting combo.
That's correct.
And one of the things you've noticed, one of the things that we've done at Represent over the years is we've tried to create a community of our donors with our candidates and past candidates and future candidates, that we're a learning place together. And I think that that really came across today in the excellent presentation that we had. But we have no answers. We have in the chat, there's places you could be calling and talking to and making your voice heard. We could be endorsing people, pushing, holding a candle out for Nancy Genst and her fellow Democratic leaders in trying to fight some of the efforts that are going on in Harrisburg, and we can plan for the future. Our campaign strategy doesn't change. We're investing in strong women who we think can run and win. Last month, we invested $64,000 in 13 incumbent legislators up for re-election in 2022. These are all districts where there's not much change, there's not much difference. And, for example, the 3 Senate races that I talked about where we endorsed 3 candidates 4 years ago. They've all been absolutely amazing senators for us in Pennsylvania, and we've endorsed them to move on to the next year. So what are we doing to help you? So we, clearly we want, what are we? We're a PAC, and we raise money. And we need money. Last cycle, we did about $500,000. We've got an aim of, we need another $300,000 in donations in the first half of this year in order to equal that. We're trying to come up with whatever tools you want. So if you run into me on the streets of Philadelphia, I'll be wearing that button up on the top, Powering Progressive Women. I will also have some of these purse cards in my pocket. So if anybody says, what do you mean by that? I can hand them to you. And guess what? These tools are available to all of us. So send us a note through the Represent website, and we'll get you some materials so that you can advertise for us all the time. Because when we tell people that Pennsylvania ranks has the most unequal school district funding in the country, it has ramifications for our student, for our state, and these are things that we know need to be changed, but will not be changed until we flip the legislature. Be part of the movement. be part of this. This is January. It's cold. There's lots you can do. We will soon have this presentation today up on as a video up on our website. Share it with other people. Become aware of our candidates and our work. You should all be able to go through the list of people that are on calls like this and go, oh, I know Lauren LaRue, I know Claudette Williams, and I'm wondering what's going to happen next for Deb Siamaka. We have a new program. We just want to invite 3 friends. Invite 3. I'm not asking too much. I want you to find 3 people that don't already know us and get them on our next calls, ask them to donate, ask them to attend briefings, ask them to volunteer. Invite 3 friends to join us in 2022. If everybody invites 3, the umbrella effect will be amazing. Our next breakfast briefing is a breakfast for lunch event. It's going to be at noon on January 27th. One of the things that we talk about and is a real problem is women don't invest. Women don't use money as power. Women shy away from money as power, both through political contributions and nonprofit donations and other things. It's kind of, is it dirty? Is it ugly? Is it uncomfortable? Is it because the husband controls all the money? Is it, I don't know what it is, but there are people who do know. Kira-sen Banmatsu at Rutgers has written papers on women, money, and power and how women don't use the power that they have. I used to belong to an organization that used to just tell you, vote with your purse. Yes, you get 1 vote when you go into when you mark your ballot, but you got a lot more votes if you vote with your purse also. Lynn Yackel is at the Drexel Institute for Women's Health, and she runs a Women in Power Institute. And she has spoken about this subject of women, power, and money often. And so we're going to talk about women, power, and money at the end of January. It'll be a noontime event, and the announcement about it should be going out soon. I also always welcome anybody else's ideas for future events and what you'd like to know about and what would inspire your friends to want to get involved and send money to represent PA. Donate to us, and we did put up the donation information in the chat for those to donate to Spotlight. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization, and we want you to do it. Karen Lynch just said, this is amazing. I'm in. I don't know you, Karen Lynch, but I'm happy to know you. So thank you, everybody, very much, and have a good day and stay warm.